All right, up and away went Superman, and now we've got to get things that's getting a little dark in here because we've got a dark night ahead. And I mean, what? The Batman, that's right. That not that type of Dark Knight, the Dark Knight. So we've got the Batman, and the Batman is a creation of Bob Kane for years, but then there's a term that gets popularized in the industry. And it's like, oh, you don't want to get fingered. What does that mean, right? Because that sounds like something I shouldn't be able to say. Bill Finger was Bob Kane's associate and partner and kind of unwritten partner. And Bill Finger was responsible for a lot of what happens with Batman. Bob Kane creates Batman, Bill Finger creates everything else. So it's pretty ridiculous the amount of stuff that he creates. It's not everything else, but it's a lot. It's a lot. So the reason that Batman exists and is the way that he is, as I was leading on to, superheroes are starting to show up. So a year or so later, you've got the most popular superhero that shows up, and what are we going to do? Well, a lot of people are going to copy him, and then someone's going to decide, well, then I got to create the exact antithesis of this Superman. I'm going to just create a man that is the best man, the best of us all, through training, through practice, studying, science, all of that, all of it. And he creates the Batman, a man with no superpowers in all these comics, all these superpowered everything. I do not have superpowers. So Batman is he doesn't get his origin until actually like issue or strip 5, like his fifth story. First, Batman starts off, and he's very different. He's not the Batman that we know, and he looks ridiculous. He's got purple gloves, and they're ridiculous. He gets made fun of to this day for them. But Batman used to just gun people down. He'd shoot people from the bat plane with his bat machine gun, and it was a little more ridiculous. I believe the Joker dies in their very first encounter. Much like here's a little hint: the Shredder dies in the Ninja Turtles comics in the 1980s. Right? They kill off the Shredder in the first issue. Imagine that. But that's what happens. Is all those things happen, and they're all based on the fact they're darker, right? And the reason that they're darker is they're also based on not just the antithesis of Superman and the brightest of these superheroes, but also pulp heroes, pulp characters like the Shadow, all right, were very popular, all right, and very pulp novels were a little more like a little more sexy, a little more violent. All right, certainly more a bit more adult, and they preceded comic books, but they were a bit of the without pulp novels, we really don't have comics as we know them today. All right, so you've got pulp novels, and the difference between those heroes, where they were part good and part evil, they would be like, well, you know what? Bang! I'm the judge, jury, and executioner here, and they were that type of person. So that's when we really get what Batman becomes. And that is actually due to Jerry Robinson. He creates the Joker, the villain with a sense of humor, the opposite of the Batman, the sad Batman who's also angry, avenging his dead parent that was taken from him. They gave him quite an origin story, right? So that's something. That's something, and we see it today. And I believe I make this joke with my sister. I believe we were all born now knowing, like turtles know that they have to go to the sea when they hatch. We all know that Batman's parents were gunned down in an alley and the pearls go flying. All the pearls. When they make this new Batman, I hope they skip that part. Can we? We know. We know. So, and I think they're gonna. That's where we're at. So, Batman, obviously, again, rises to the top. He rises to the top. By the 40s, all right, you got 90% of boys 7 to 17 are reading comics, okay? They are reading these things. 90% of girls read some kind of comic, right? Think of that, because you've got other things that are happening, all genres. Because again, it's just, think of it as television. What's this channel? What's this channel? What's this channel? What's this comic? Romance. What's this comic? Western. What's this comic? True crime. What's this comic? You got your genres. Horror, which becomes a very big issue, right? That tells you, think of that, the entire country. So think of that, the 90%. You can't fathom what that actually is. When those fidget spinners went bananas a few years ago, believe me, that was probably like, 5% of the nation is, you get it? It's insane when you hear the numbers of the past. When something sweeps the nation, when something does go viral as we know it, the Tiger King a little while ago, right? That went viral. It's rare. Things like the Super Bowl, New Year's Eve, those things are some of the few universal things that we have that we do together as people, right? because of so much variety now. That's just what it is. There's a lot of variety. So things change. We don't have 3 channels to choose from. We have, oh, cable got invented. There's 27. Oh, satellite. There's 700. Oh, the internet. I can watch anything that's ever been invented and ever will be invented at any time I want. That's it. For usually $1 or free. That tells you exactly what it is. You've got quite the library of content to look at. They didn't even have television. So comic books blew their minds. The same way smartphones blew our minds when these got invented, right? It's a big deal when something changes everything. And having all of the world's knowledge at your fingertips is a big deal. Because what happened to arguments? You'd think that they would be gone. But nope, there's too much. There are too many lies out there. So you've got that. And then what did I say in the last video about Robin? Do you remember? Why do we need Robin? You're going to hear this thing always get said about superheroes. Well, if he doesn't have a sidekick, he'll be talking to himself. He'll have no one to talk to. He'll look crazy. He's talking out loud. This was a real concern. So sometimes they would give them sidekicks. They would give them people to talk to and interact with so that they weren't just talking themselves or always just thinking and just having no one to interact with. So Robin gets brought along because he's also representative of the reader. He's a kid. So, I want to be Robin, right? That's the whole idea, is that he represented that, but he also represented something else. You've got 150 comic titles, right? How do you pick them out? The whole wall of color, okay? Batman's comic being a very dark character, very black and white, all that stuff, right? Robin's jumping out of a drum. They would put Robin on these covers to get the color popping. That was a big part of it. It was really to get some of that attention. So, speaking of them kids, everyone relates to Robin, right? But, and I just said, do you want to be Robin or do you want to be Batman? You kind of want to be Batman, don't you? So what happens is there's another character that shows up in the now ridiculously named Whiz comics. Yes, Whiz. So, and it's by a character by the name of, I love to say it, let's do it, I'll add some effects, SHAZAM! It's Shazam. So Shazam is a big deal, and he's known as Captain Marvel, right? Which will become a big thing and a whole thing going forward that they still don't know what to do today. Because this was a comics company and they just created a character named Captain Marvel. There was not a Marvel Comics yet, right? This was a different comics company, this one right here, and this was in Whiz Comics. So Whiz Comics created the character of Shazam. That is Billy Batson, orphan, who says a magic word and he turns into the superhero that's just as good as Superman. Right? He can do everything Superman can. Shazam stands for, do you know what Shazam stands for? I believe it is Solomon, Hercules, Achilles, Zeus, Atlas, and Mercury. I think. Am I right? Let's see. I'm going to say I'm right. I think I'm right. So that's what that is. And each one of their powers, like the strengths of this one, the speed of this one, the this of that, the wisdom of that one. So that's what Shazam is. The other thing about Shazam that actually is ridiculous is that Shazam breaks this barrier of magic. Shazam is based on magic, okay? Notice I've said, and sci-fi is about to come up, right? And I mentioned a robot already, right? But I mentioned Westerns and Army a lot, military comics, and romance comics. Have I mentioned magic yet? No. Magic becomes a big deal because anything can happen in his comic. No realism. They travel to different worlds, planets, there's dragons and aliens, there's nonsense. They create the Marvel family, so his sister and his brother and his other brother, and they're all Marvel. And then even there's a rabbit, there's Hoppy, okay? Ridiculous, right? This is the golden age of comics. I'm also a rabbit, and I'm Shazam. It's absurd. I love it the most. Or I'm Captain Marvel, part of the Marvel family, right? We're still doing it to this day. Shazam making such a big deal, such a big impact, doing something different. Magic now is a big part of comics, and that changes everything and adds to the ridiculousness of the golden age again. And cartoon rabbit superheroes, I love it. All right. Now, I also talked to you about what? I talked to you about television not being invented, but the radio was still around. And the radio was a big, big, big difference maker in comics. The radio invents in the world of Superman Jimmy Olsen. It invents the concept of kryptonite. Another famous thing the radio station or the radio show of Superman does is he fights the KKK. That's right, he goes after the Ku Klux Klan. When Superman took down the KKK because he learned, the guy who's creating the Superman comic, like learns all of their codes, right? He learns all, or not the comic, the radio show. He learns all their codes, all their secret stuff, right? And then they make fun of it on the Superman radio show. So then people start making fun of the Ku Klux Klan. So then the Ku Klux Klan is like, oh, and they start to not have as many people show up because they become a laughingstock. Pretty interesting, right? That was a big thing about the radio. It really does invent a few different concepts for these characters that then carry over into different media going forward. And then the comics adapt that, just like comics adapt things from the movies that come out now. So that when people go see these movies and they get a whole bunch of new fans, that they go pick up the comic and go, oh, I understand why Spider-Man shoots his webs out of his wrists, because they changed it. Because that's what he did in the movies, because they just didn't want to bother him inventing web fluid, because they thought it was too convenient. Remember, that's not a superpower. He just invented that. He just, I happen to create this thing that's like a spider web. That's convenient, right? So it's an interesting thing. They later it's just part of his powers. Like, that's why. We're about to get to 1941, right? FDR and spies. There's spies among us here in America, and spy comics obviously start to become a big, big thing as the war is raging on. Remember, there's still a world war going on, the second one, but America hasn't entered the war, okay? It's happening. Atrocities are happening. America, well, we're doing that. We've got to do our thing, and we're just trying to this and that because of global politics. That's going to change in a year. Captain America gets invented. So we've got Captain America shows up after a few years, and he's there to punch Hitler right in the face, because punching Nazis is what everyone should do, because Nazis are evil forever. So that happens, and comics go to war. That's a whole thing. All these characters go to war, and unfortunately it does lead to horrible, racist illustrations and stereotypes. Unfortunately, people of color were drawn horribly, back then. Asian people, horrible, okay? Saying the most offensive things on covers. It's terrible. It was a part of the time. It's wrong. It's wrong today. That's the point of comics, is we got to always try to get the message that we want to be good. America, this and that. But at that time, man, you could just be horrible. Be like, oh, let's, like a political cartoon. Look at the political cartoons of back in the day. Look how they draw Asian folks. It's terrible, right? And that's what they were doing. So it's that sort of horrible thing. And that exists. And that's how they were like, well, they're the enemy. Again, who else did this? Looney Tunes, Disney cartoons. Okay, they all did this. They all go beat Hitler, and that's what they do. It's a big part of what happens, and everything that's going on around this time really just starts to affect comics, comic sales. Soldiers love comics, comic books. They love them. Right? Comic books are a huge thing. They're sending over comic books so that the soldiers have entertainment there. All right? So comic books are a huge part of it, and then that's what changes when the war ends, because that's going to happen. Soldiers loving those comics, right? Half the nation. 70 million people are reading comics. It is the highest circulation, okay? 1 out of 4 people is reading a comic book, okay? And you can imagine if Superman's the most popular, that means that 60 million people, something like that, are reading that guy, right? Think of that. That's the amount of people. So you've got that. It's 1 out of 4 people. That is outselling the Saturday Evening Post that Norman Rockwell famously paints portraits and things for. The Reader's Digest outsold 10-1. Comics are outselling the other most popular magazines 10-1. That is comic books. Okay? So as you can see where we're headed, what else is going on at this time? You know what's going on. You know who's important. Who matters most? Who's downtrodden and not looked at and practically invisible up until some strong woman says, we can do it. That's right. So you've got women have to get into the workplace. Rosie the Riveter's there, and they are finally empowering women. And women get empowered, and then someone shows up that really empowers tons of ladies, and it's this lady. It's Wonder Woman. And Wonder Woman is very important. And the history of Wonder Woman is a little interesting, and she's going to be a big part of a lot of this story. Because Wonder Woman ends up just being a perfect target for all of this sort of stuff as comics evolve. We can all do an entire class on just Wonder Woman's evolution and how she evolved during all of this. The good times and the bad, the mistakes along the way, and the triumphs of what she represents and stands for. Both in comics too, her character growth even in comics, and out here what she represents to us. So that's what happened. Until this point, the girl, they were called girls, okay, so not women, girls. Girls are called cheerleaders. They were cheerleaders. They're cheerleaders for the superhero, right? Or they're their girlfriends, or even they're a pest. They're a pest. They're annoying, right? Oh, Lois, you fell over again. I gotta save you again, right? So even that, the nuisance, that is how major media, one of the number one sources of media, represents all of women. Isn't that horrifying? Until someone makes a difference. Now, Wonder Woman was not created by a woman, all right? She was interestingly created by, I believe, William Marsden, okay, who has a belief that women are superior to men, all right? I don't want to go into my politics. I kind of believe it too. There's a lot of dumb guys out there, right? So you've got William Marsden. He's also credited with the invention of the lie detector, okay? This is a man that was obsessed with the truth. That's what he was doing. So he invents the lie detector, invents this woman. What does Wonder Woman represent? Right? Truth. The lasso of truth. That is what it is. That's why he tells a very personal character. Now, here's some of the other thing about Wonder Woman. With that lasso, one of the things that is, and it still happens to this day, which is like, how does she still fall for this from time to time? Oh no, great Hera, by the rules of the Themyscira and the Amazons, if I am bounded by a man, I have no free will. Okay, that's it. Wonder Woman is like hogtied and tied up and tied on an X and tied up, like even in her first issue, like 3 times. Okay, there's a lot of fetishy bondage stuff in the art of Wonder Woman. So again, there's some subversive stuff in there, and then this becomes a target. It becomes a target. Now remember, and a lot of you I know believe this, remember, a woman even oh, look, she's so scantily clad. Lots of women look at that is a big step forward for them for freedom. That's a big point. My body, my strength, and this is it. I don't have to cover up. You see other countries, you have to cover yourself entirely, right? One of the big freedoms about some of us here is like, yeah, that we do. Women had to earn that in a way at that time and prove it. And Wonder Woman comes out. Look at that, right? Now remember, she used to wear a skirt. Comes out. She's not wearing those little underwears yet. She used to wear a skirt, okay? But it's a big step. It's a big step forward for how women are being represented, all right? But despite all that, some of that fetishy stuff, only early on is that, okay? One of the first books banned by the Catholic Church. So you can tell they noticed, people are noticing this character, right? So it's probably selling for a few reasons. But ultimately, there is the goodness of what Wonder Woman is. A strong, independent woman created in the time that needed her for the times that she represents. And that's a big, big deal. So let's call it there, all right? Let's call it there with Wonder Woman. And moving forward, let's talk about what happens after some of this and after the war, right? The war lasted quite a few years, but post-war, we're going to go past the 40s, all right, into the 50s next, because a lot of this we spent a lot of time right in the 50s. Because you can see this is where it happens, right? This is the big bang of it, okay? And then going forward, it goes through genre evolution, and we're going to talk about that. So we go through that, and it's a little quicker because remember, a groundbreaking, legendary character that's going to live forever doesn't get born every day, right? A lot did, and those looks stay to this very day. Oh, that's how they look forever. And anytime you try to change it, people do not like it. You just got to adapt it. But it's still ultimately the same Batman, isn't it? Right? It's still ultimately the exact same Superman, ultimately almost the exact same Wonder Woman. And whenever they change some of the stuff, it rarely works. We'll get into that when we get into the Bronze Age and the Modern Age, because character costume and costume design and all of that, especially in the 90s, becomes a big part of it. The Silver Age also is a big jump for design and because fashion, right? So that's a big part of it. So the next video is going to sweep us into the 40s, all the way up to 1950, and then we're going to stop there as we then get to the Silver Age. So, that was another 25 minutes. This is thrilling. Thrilling.